Welcome to season 2 of the Play Their Way podcast, where we talk about all things in child first coaching. I'm your host, Laura Jane Jones, and today's guest is rower Scarlett Dewar. Welcome to the crew, Scarlett. Producer Aladdin, that was a rowing joke. You can put a little boom tish in there if you want. Scarlett is from Rochdale in Greater Manchester, and she's a multi-medal winning England and GB age group rower. I'm delighted that we've got another actual athlete on the pod to talk about their own lived experiences. So welcome along, Scarlett. I hope that you're looking forward to this worthwhile conversation as well. I'm sure you are. I'd love to start with you talking us through your life as a rower so far, but I'm going to break it down today in a slightly different way to the way I've done other podcasts. We talk about the pillars of Play Their Way. There's 3, really, and we do it in quite general terms normally, but this time I want to do them kind of one by one, because I think as an actual athlete with lived experiences, it would be interesting to kind of get your take on those things. So first I'm going to start with journey, because I'd love to know how a young girl from Rochdale gets into rowing.
Yeah, I get asked that quite a lot, and I came from quite a big rowing family, so growing up rowing had always been there. It was never something that was shoved down my throat or anything like that. It was something I could pick and I could choose. I'd done every other sport before rowing, literally everything, until I eventually decided I'd go down to the rowing club. My mum had rowed her whole life. She'd represented GB, and then both of my uncles rowed at the Olympics, winning world championship medals and stuff like that. So rowing had been quite big in my family, and I'm actually the only person to pick it up. Yeah, and I am really lucky to have that support of my family and everything. So yeah.
So more than you choosing rowing kind of chose you, Scarlett. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, it's kind of fair. I always tell people, I'm always no, but it was my choice, and they're always was it though? But yeah, bit of both, I say.
What's rowing given you as a sport? You're a young adult. How has it helped shape the person that you are today?
Yeah, hugely. I wouldn't be the person I am today without rowing. And it's crazy how much it has had an impact on my life. I think I'm so much more of a resilient and stronger individual now. I think that if I wouldn't have it, I think it's taught me so many life lessons. How to deal with setbacks, how to pick yourself up when you're really low, and also what it feels like to work hard for something and then achieve it. I think that's something that's so great about rowing, is you work ridiculously hard, and then when it does pay off and you get that feeling, it's amazing, and that's why you keep coming back for more.
Voice is one of the most obvious parts of Play Their Way, and the one we kind of talk about the most, ironically. Do you feel like being a young athlete and a child athlete taught you to have a voice because of what you were involved with?
Yeah, definitely. I think people do think I'm quite an outspoken person, and sports definitely helped with that. It's especially in rowing, where you have to communicate between each other in a boat. Sometimes you might be in a boat with people you don't like, or you might be in a team with people you don't like, and you've just got to get on with it, and coach athlete dynamics, all of that. It's helped me a lot, I'd say.
It's funny because you describe yourself as being outspoken. I know sometimes, certainly I felt like this in the past, that's not always easy in a sporting environment, because as much as we're saying that rowing's giving you a voice, it can actually also mean that if you're outspoken, you do struggle because you've got to toe the line as an athlete. Is something you felt like that?
Yeah, definitely. I have felt quite a lot of pressure sometimes as well, because I've felt the weight on my shoulders of I'm setting a role model, and it's crazy really, because you get in your head so much about this stuff, and I'm probably not, but I feel like people were watching me, and especially in environments I've been in where people haven't spoken out, and I really think this isn't right, I should do something. like I felt like, well, if it's not me, like who's gonna? And when I'm in a environment, sometimes I'm really passionate about some things, especially like the culture of like fueling and making sure like you're adequately fueling. I like try to set a model with that, and not even like being completely outspoken and stuff, but just like the actions I take and like within the culture of my group, I try to be a positive one, because I've been there when it's not been, and I don't want to be, you know, that person that can contribute to that. So yeah, I have felt the pressure on my shoulders quite a bit about being outspoken, and, you know, for good and for bad, I guess.
I guess what you're talking about there is weight of expectation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that something that you think is an internal force? That's something you're putting on yourself, or is that an external thing?
Yeah, definitely more internal. And I think, so I work with True Athlete Project, TAP, and I only started working with them this year, and like we've really explored our values in that, and it is an amazing program to be on, and I'm super grateful for that. And I would say like one of my values is like inspiring, and like I take like quite a lot of pressure on myself and internal pressure to like do that without just by setting like a good example that I need, like that I could have seen when I was younger.
The external weight of expectation on young athletes can also be really detrimental.
Yeah.
Does that tend to come from more results-based things and expectation of what your pathway is going to be perhaps in a sport?
Yeah, so definitely when I started rowing, I was way too impatient and I wanted everything now. And I'd be lying if I said that like I was so chill about the future, and like I'm not still impatient, because I am. But I think I'm better now at it than I was, and I realise that, you know, we're all on different journeys, and things will come at the right time. You can't force things. As long as, you know, you just stay present and do the process, it will come. Your time will come. And from being impatient before, when I was a lot younger and wanted everything now, that has often held me back. And I think like comparison as well was a big thing for me, feeling the pressure of like results and having to deliver results. I have found myself comparing myself to other athletes and stuff, and you know that it just doesn't benefit anyone really. Like, as long as, you know, you stay true to yourself, they'll have their time and you'll have yours. You've just got to kind of go that wavelength. I think that's what's helped me.
How much have coaches helped you to balance that and feel better about things like that? So that's like my philosophy for that has all come through like a mentor I've had. I've never really had a coach that's been so patient and So would you say you haven't always felt acknowledged as an athlete? Do you feel like there have been times where those crippling weights of expectation have got on top of you, and until you've had a mentor, it's been difficult to manage that as an individual?
Yeah, definitely. Even from being a young athlete, 14, 15, like I seriously found the weight of expectation hard to deal with. And it is huge, and especially coaches that, you know, want the best for you. Sometimes it just adds to that pressure, right? And it's like, you know, we want more and more and more results, and sometimes that's all they ever talk about, and then you feel like you have to deliver those results and not really discuss much else. So So let's talk about this positive mentoring experience. It's moved the needle for you. Yeah.
It's made you perhaps a better athlete because you feel more listened to. Is that the case?
Yeah, and I think it's given me a whole other Scarlett, right? Like, it's not just Scarlett the rower, it's, you know, Scarlett that loves so much more. Like, I've realised that, you know, I'm not just a rower, I'm super into like climate activism, and I like to dance about random songs, like not very well, but yeah, there's so much more to me than just being a rower, and I think that was completely taken out of the question when you were with a coach. Yeah, and just like extra little things which we never really got taught, like visualization, yeah, like psychology stuff and all those other dimensions that mentoring's helped with. Yeah.
The third tenet of play their way is choice. Is that something that you feel like you haven't had a lot of growing up as an athlete? You haven't been the master or mistress, in this case, of your own destiny?
No, I'd say that I have always had a choice in what I've done. And yeah, I sometimes I've felt pressured by it, but I have always said that, like, if I'm really unhappy, then, you know, I will like say something, or I will say this isn't right, and, you know, maybe not go down that path. But yeah, luckily enough, I felt like I've been in an environment where I can always speak out, whether that's because, you know, that's half of my personality, but yeah, I felt like I've always had a choice in what I do.
It brings us quite neatly on to your struggle with REDS. So maybe explain for the listeners what that has meant for you.
Yeah, so REDS or RED-S, like, you can pronounce it either way. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it, to be honest. But basically it stands for relative energy deficiency in sport. And yeah, it's basically what it says on the tin. You underfuel and overtrain. And yeah, it has really harmful consequences on your body. Yeah, like fatigue, low bone density, like fertility and performance as well. So it has like a big impact on you. Yeah.
So that's something that you've experienced as a young athlete. Have you had to manage that yourself? Have you had to be the one who's identified that you've had those struggles and said, I'm going to sit this one out, or I'm going to need to change my training to fit me now with this?
Yeah, definitely not. Like, I struggled with it for about like 3 years. And at the start of that, even discussing the word period was like embarrassing to me. And I didn't want to, I spoke to it about it with my mum, and I was like, don't you dare say anything to my coach. Like this is so embarrassing. Like, so to be sat here now, like talking about this is like a complete 360. So I felt like quite like ashamed of it, I guess, and it was just a bit uncomfortable to talk about with male coaches and stuff. So yeah, my performances were going okay, and I was like, one less stress to deal with. So yeah, crack on with what I'm doing, I guess. It was only until I spoke to a nutritionist and my mum, we went to the GP and stuff, but they were very unhelpful, to say the least. They prescribed me on the pill, and I, didn't want that. So I was like, yeah, no, because I don't know, I just didn't feel like it was right for a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
So I spoke to a nutritionist, and I was kind of in like semi-recovery for like a couple of years, I'd say, where I'd kind of got over the like seriously underfueling stage, and I was starting to incorporate like lots of different macronutrients into my diet now, and like feeling a lot more freedom with food, which was helping. But then still no period after like 3 years. So after one of my like most successful seasons, when I'd just come off the back of like making a nationals final and, you know, winning the British champs for beach sprints and representing England and stuff. Coming off that season, she was like, look, like, I really think you should do something now. And I was like, oh, not now. Like, it's like, we was going on to my last year as a junior. So I had all these like goals of like representing the world champs, and it didn't seem like the right timing. But like, when is it ever going to be the right time? You know, like, junior athletes are so driven. It's always like the next thing. So yeah, she taught me around to it. And once I realised what was going on in the inside, I was like, yeah, I probably should do something about that. So I spoke to my coach at the time, who was super understanding. I had mentioned it to other coaches before in the past as well, to which point they just ignored. But then when I had this other changing coach, he was super understanding, and he was like, look, I don't have a clue what that is, and I don't know how to support you, but we're going to find out. So, yeah, he got in touch with British Rowing and experts and all of that jazz, and they collaborated to make a program that works for me, and spend the next year recovering. But I still wanted to go to the world champs as well. So I was like, you know, you can do that, and then you're going to come back stronger. So I guess it made the recovery process like as if I was in a bit of a rush, and maybe I should have like taken that weight of expectation off myself then. But I don't know, I think it made the whole experience of recovery even more worthwhile, because it kept me driven even when I, you know, didn't want to show up, and even when I was watching all my teammates do super high intensity pieces and I had to sit out from that and I couldn't do that, but it still made me come to training because I still wanted that end goal. And yeah, I was lucky to have the support from my coach then through all of that, and he changed the program to fit me, still coached me, still kept in contact with British Rowing, and eventually I did go on to like trial after that and stuff. So if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have made that decision then. Yeah.
One of the things we've talked about already is choice, and you've said that you got to the end of that successful season and you didn't want to do anything about it. And we obviously want to promote self-advocacy for young athletes, but there's a point where coaches do have a duty of care. How did your coaches keep you engaged, despite the fact it didn't really feel like it was what you wanted to do at that point, but it was the right thing for you?
Yeah, I think like the close people around me, like my mum, my coach, my family and stuff like that, they could see what I was going through, and they did know it was hard. It was a hard decision to make, and I think they gave me space as well. Like, they weren't, you know, all over me all the time, but they gave me space, but I knew that they were there. And I think he had, like, I had a lot of respect for my coach, and he respected me that, you know, we were going to get through the difficult time and come back stronger. And eventually I did. Yeah, I came back with more PBs and stronger than ever. So, yeah, it was worth it.
How important has trust been for you with your coaches as you've gone through your sport?
Oh, God, yeah. Like, trust has been super important. And I've found myself in a position where I've just not gelled and things haven't been working, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really trust this person in front of me, and probably vice versa. Yeah, and being completely honest, like, having like trust issues with your coach is really hard to deal with, and I have felt like sometimes the dynamic when it's really not working, like, do I even want to do this sport anymore? Like, it is crazy what how much of an impact a coach can have, I think, and having to take a step back and be like, look, this isn't working, I'm going to actively go and seek another coach. is really hard, and you know, you've got to be super brave to say that. And yeah, I've had to do it a couple of times, and it's not necessarily that it's a bad coach. It's just like, we don't work well together, and you know, I don't trust you, you might not trust me, and we part our separate ways. Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point. It doesn't mean that someone's a bad coach, it just might not be the right coach for you. But do you think that can be quite an influential factor in young people, and probably specifically girls, leaving sports participation if they feel like the coach isn't the right person for them? Is it easy for girls to step away, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I've been lucky to have the support from my family as well, and you know, I went all the way to a boarding school where I didn't feel seen. I got a scholarship there, and you know, I had really high hopes for that season. It was quite a big program, and I was like, they were performing well, I was performing well, but yeah, it wasn't good for me and my health, and being in like that environment where I didn't quite trust my coach. Yeah, it can make such a big difference. I left like wanting to potentially leave my sport, and that's like so sad to say, because I love my sport and I would never do that now in the position I am, because it's like taught me so much about myself, and I love rowing. Without that being too cringy, but
not cringy at all.
But yeah, no, I truly mean it. Like, I love my sport so much, and it's so sad to say that like a coach would even make me feel like that. And if I hadn't have had the strong support of my family, like saying, look, come home, like it's not right, you can step away from this, it's fine, I probably would have left the sport. And yeah, it's so, I hear it so much and I see it so much, like young girls that, you know, come into the sport and like coaching dynamic doesn't work, whatever. They just leave, and it's very sad indeed.
It is very sad.
Yeah.
Play their way is a big term. The first word of it is play, the fun side of things. I'm really intrigued with rowing, because it's a sport I don't know. I've never got in a boat. I'd probably be the cox more than anything, because I'm so small. But where's the fun? Where's the release valve in rowing?
Yeah, so rowing is an interesting one. So it's not like a football game or a netball game where, you know, you're there with each other all the time. Like, often, you know, you're sat in a boat for people who are pulling as hard as they can, not like speaking to each other, and rowing backwards. So sometimes you don't get that same, you know, like, I don't know how to say it, but you don't get that same, like,
the social side,
I guess. But then you do, like, you'll be sat in that boat, and you can feel it. Like, when you've got, you know, like 4 girls or 8 girls, I love rowing in an 8 as well sometimes. Like, when you've got 8 people who are putting themselves on the line and giving the absolute everything, you know, that speaks for itself. And you might not, you know, need the talk and the chatter and everything like that, you know, to make it a social sport, I guess. And it still is.
What about outside of the boat, though? What about in those gym sessions? How important has it been that coaches have kept those light and fun to make you feel engaged and make you feel like this is something I enjoy doing, not something I have to do?
Yeah. That is super important. And yeah, the coach, I do think I have seen the impact of like the coach can have on an environment. Like, often if the coach is like cultivating like quite a positive environment, where people are working together to achieve a goal, not competing against each other, when they've got that just right, often the athletes feel supported. They don't feel threatened. They don't feel as if they're in an environment where they can't have fun. And I mean, they can still work hard, still get serious when you need to, by all means. But yeah, the coach definitely has a role to play with like cultivating that environment so you can have a bit of a laugh as well,
Under the framework of play their way and voice, choice and journey, keeping those three things in mind, how much do you think it can improve the experience of an athlete by making sure that we are living by those standards?
Like 100%, like it makes such a difference. And even like how I said before about just making young people drop out of sport, like you said, it can be make or break, I think. And that's why I'm super passionate about like grassroots coaches, because I think sometimes as well you hear all the time about, that kid's gonna make it and that kid's gonna be really good, and who knows, like actually who knows, but coaches have a big role in that. And if that kid's turning up to training and enjoying it and having a good time, then that's probably gonna make quite a big influence on whether they're gonna make it or not. Like shoving all this pressure on a small child, I don't know whether that's like helpful at all. Actually, I know it's not helpful at all. Yeah.
So thinking about every coach that you've ever had, the good ones, the bad ones, the in-between ones that you haven't quite got along with, what's the one piece of advice that Scarlett at 19 wishes she could have given all of them over the years? What's the one thing that you'd like coaches to remember before they walk into any session?
That's a tough question. Just really like everyone has got their own story, and a coach isn't going to know all of it, and a coach might come in at a certain point of their story and they might think they know their whole story, but they probably don't. And like a coach who comes in and tries to understand that individual and not try to already have their preconceived ideas of what that individual is. And it takes time. Like, you're not going to 100% get your coach straight away. It takes time to create that, coach-athlete relationship, I guess. But just know that, you don't know their whole story, and treat them as an individual. And
I like it, Scarlett. It feels like a piece of advice that lots of coaches will listen to and think about the individual as opposed to the wider picture of their coaching environment and their sports environment. Scarlett, you've been a fantastic guest today, and it's been amazing to have such unique experiences shared with our listeners, and I'm sure they'll all really appreciate it. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed. Be sure to leave us a review and share this with someone else who you think might enjoy it too. Check out our website at www.playtheirway.org and follow Play Their Way on social media at Play Their Way on TikTok, X and LinkedIn, and at Play Their Way UK on Facebook and Instagram.